Hi, I'm Smeargle. I'm going to be doing the Week 1 recap for the PWC Division 2 D League. I don't know what they call it anymore. Sometimes they call it Division 2, sometimes they call it the D League. It's a wacky experience, but regardless, I'm going to be bringing you recaps for it. Going to go over basically play by play, but also kind of just skip through some parts of the battle uh, and talk about plays that made a difference throughout the game, key plays throughout the game. Um, and yeah, the first game of the week is going to be ABP, and the Geo is 12 Flygons versus Nathaniel, coach of the Dallas Staravias. Nate brought his Virizion, Silvally, Megastelix, Jellicent, Kieran Black, and Mimikyu. ABP brings his Coco, Umbreon, Gorobus, Darmanitan, Megaglade, and his Registeel. At team preview, we see ABP can kind of just run train through through Nate's team late game if he has a Scarfed Arm on his team, because the only two checks to it I can see are a potential Silvally type and Jellicent being easily chipped and taken advantage of by the first two Mons, Tapu Koko and Umbreon, as the Darm can easily just U-turn on a predicted switch, go into the Koko, and then proceed to do some damage. On the flip side, Nate can do a lot of damage to ABP's team with Virizion. ABP's Virizion checks are the Koko. He can offensively check it with a Scarfed Arm, Koko plus Mega Gallade that's faster. And yeah, aside from that, it kind of just has a really good game, again, a good matchup against this. A Scarf Kieran Black also does really well if he's carrying Shadow Claw. But yeah, enough of that. Let's get right into the game. Nate leads off with his Silvally, as ABP leads off with Gallade. Turn 1, ABP makes a prediction. I assume he predicted the Jellicent to come in, as he just parts into the Mimikyu. Predicting the Registeel to come in, Nate clicks Will-O-Wisp, and then proceeds to set up a Swords Dance, as ABP lays up his rocks. For a reason I can't really describe, Nate clicks Shadow Sneak and does 21 to the Registeel, as he gets his disguise broken by an Iron Head. The red card goes off, the Koko is dragged in, the Registeel comes back in as Nate goes for another Shadow Sneak. He hard switches in his Sneelix because it's a really good, as ABP goes for an Iron Head, and then he Megas up, and as ABP goes into his Gallade, Nate clicks Earthquake, getting some big damage off on it, which could be really good later on. Brings in his Jellicent as ABP clicks Close Combat. Then he proceeds to click Wisp as the Gorobus comes in. The Gorobus is going to Shell Smash on this turn, as the Jellicent clicks Hex and knocks out the Gorobus with burn damage. ABP goes into the Koko. The Jellicent is going to switch out into the Megastelix, as ABP goes for the Guardian of Alola, reading the Steelix to come in, meaning that the best check to the Tapu Koko is severely weakened. He then switches in his Kyurem, as ABP goes for another HP, another hidden power, doing no damage to the Kyurem, revealing its fire. He clicks Earth Power as the Umbreon comes in, and he reveals to be Life Orb. He then proceeds to switch into his Mimikyu as ABP clicks the Protect. Then the Virizion comes in as ABP clicks Toxic and misses, which is pretty unfortunate, but it happens. And then the Steelix is going to come back in as ABP clicks Toxic again. And now the Steelix is going to die to 2 foul plays as he poisons the Umbreon. So I'm going to skip past this. A Wish is thrown up in the air as Nate sets up his rocks. The foul play goes off on the Protect. More toxic damage is racking up on this Umbreon as the Steelix finally goes down, meaning the Koko can kind of just go in on this team. The Virizzion's going to come in and click Leaf Blade. I assume he was predicting the Gallade to come in on a close combat, but it didn't work out for him. Here he Leaf Blades again. Actually, he probably didn't have close combat, but he's going to Leaf Blade twice, knock out the Umbreon. The Darm's going to come out, and he's going to click the, as he goes into his Silvally. The Dharma is going to U-turn out into the Coco on the Savali coming in. He then proceeds to switch in his Kyurem Black, which is in turn knocked out by 2 Thunderbolts. As the Kyurem goes down, the Virizion comes back in, and ABP switches in his Darmanitan as he misses a Stone Edge. This Stone Edge miss means that the Darmanitan doesn't live. But he actually misses, ABP misses a Toxic, letting him kill his Darmanitan to make up for the miss. The Coco comes back in as the Darmanitan goes down, goes for the U-turn. As the Registeel comes back in, Nate then proceeds to just pummel as the Registeel comes in as a sack. The Coco comes back, or the Virizion dies to the Toxic. The Coco comes in on the double down as the Jellicent comes in. And then the Coco is going to click T-Bolt, and the Jellicent's going to live as he scalds and does some good damage. The Jellicent is then going to drop to another Thunderbolt. Mimikyu's going to come in, click Shadow Sneak, and 2-hit KO the Tapu Koko as the Thunderbolt just barely misses out on the KO. And the Gallade's going to come in, and it's going to Shadow Sneak the Mimikyu, and then close combat the Silvally, as ABP wins this game 1-0. So, a few plays that could have gone differently. If he set up 2 Swords Dances on the Registeel and then Shadow Clawed it, I feel like that probably would have gone better for him, but the red card did force him out anyway. I feel like if he clicked Swords Dance again, he would have been in a much better position. He would have gotten more damage on the Coco, which meant that late game, he would have been able to deal with it a lot easier. But, regardless, was a really good game. In my opinion, the best one of the week. Very little hacks, aside from the Toxic and the Stone Edge miss, which ABP graciously let Nate make up for. Yeah, pretty well played from both sides. Next up, we have the Tacoma Toros, or the Charlotte Beedrills, or whatever the hell, coached by Jake, versus the Borussia Pichu, coached by Saul. Saul brings his Mega Diancie, his Thundurus, his Garchomp, his Volcarona, his Empoleon, and the Mantine, as Jake brings his Rachi, Thundy-T, Mega Sceptile, Tauros, Donphan, and his Pangoro. Team preview, we see Thundurus versus Thundurus. Pretty dangerous. If this is a special Mega Sceptile, possibly mixed, it does a lot of work with Dragon Stab, Earthquake, potentially Thunder Punch for the Mantine, and yeah, doesn't really need much else. The Donphan looking pretty defensively frustrating for Saul, as he does bring both of his water types. The Jirachi, depending on the set, looking like it could be an issue as well. And yeah, getting into the game. Empoleon is the lead against the Jirachi. They both exchange wow. So turn 1, the Jirachi is going to come in against the Empoleon. Jake is going to get his rocks up as Saul clicks Scald, gets 19% off. He then proceeds to switch his Tauros in as Saul defogs. The Tauros is going to click the Wild Charge as the Mantine comes in on an expected Earthquake. Mantine's going to go down turn 3. The Volcarona is going to come in as the Donphan proceeds to come in on the Quiver Dance. The Volcarona then proceeds to go for a Z Fire move, and the Donphan's going to live on Sturdy and knock out the Volcarona with a Stone Edge. Saul proceeds then to go out into his Diancie, and saving his Donphan, Jake decides to bring in the Jirachi, which is then 2-hit KO'd by Earth Power, but he sets up a sub as the Wish goes off, and then he clicks Earth Power and knocks out the Jirachi. Tauros is going to come in, win the speed tie, knock out the sub as it dies to a Moonblast, and then the Thundy comes in and knocks out the Diancie with Scar Flash Cannon. So the Garchomp is going to come out now as Jake sacks off his Donphan and brings in his Pangoro, which eats the Outrage and knocks out the Garchomp with an Ice Punch. Saul then proceeds to go into his Thundurus, as the Pangoro reveals to be Scarfed and goes for an Ice Punch as he clicks Psychic, and he then brings in the Empoleon as the Ice Punch goes off, doing a nice 8. The Sceptile comes in on the Empoleon. Saul gets up his rocks, meaning the Pangoro is dead on arrival. Earthquake is clicked as Ice Beam is clicked, and the Empoleon exchanges health for the death of the Sceptile, meaning the Thundurus can come in, click Thunderbolt twice, and win the game. So, a relatively fast game. If Saul saw the Thundurus being Scarf coming, I feel like this game would have been a lot better for him, but yes, he went into the Thundurus immediately after the Jirachi went down, so that kind of screamed Scarf, but aside from that, a relatively decent game. The Pangoro putting in a decent amount of work, getting huge damage off the Empoleon, putting it in range of a Wakan, putting it out of range for the Wakan Berry to save it. A relatively good game. Offensively played on both sides. Next up, we have the Sacramento Nidokings, coached by It's Whatever, versus the Minnesota Hyperfangs, coached by Thunder Numbers. Thunder brings his Alamomola, his Weavile, his Tangrowth, his Heracross Mega, I forgot the Mega, the Galvantula, and the Mew, as it brings his Melodic, Sylveon, Gren, Bronzong, Golbat, and the Infernape. So, looking at team preview, both teams brought relatively bulky Mons. From Thunder's side, we see he brings Mew, plus the Tangrowmola core, which is pretty fat on its own. Mega Heracross is bulky in its own right, relatively thick defensive core. And from its, he brings his Melodic plus his Bronzong Golbat and the Sylveon, all of which can chew hits and do damage back. In Sylveon's case, the other three are kind of passive, but they still fulfill their roles pretty well. Offensively speaking, it looks like the Infernape has a really good matchup as soon as Alamomola dies, and Mew takes a lot of damage, and the Greninja looks pretty good late game if the Heracross is dead, and a possible Scarf Galvantula is taken care of if he is packing flying coverage for the Heracross on the Greninja. So, turn 1, we see the Gren lead versus the Galvantula, and immediately a Scarfold switch comes out and the Greninja dies. So, the Tangrowth comes in as the Infernape comes out. He then proceeds to switch in his Mew as it predicts the Alamomola to come in, clicks Nasty Plot, predicts a switch in general. The Mew is going to Psychic the Infernape, and then proceed to die to 2 Flamethrowers, getting the Infernape really weakened in range of the Galvantula. It brings in his Bronzong as Thunder clicks Volt Switch, covering the switch and the sack. The Weavile's going to come in, and then proceed to switch straight into the Alamomola, as it reveals to be a special Bronzong and clicks Flash Cannon. The Alamomola is going to go for Toxic, expecting a switch, as it just lays up his rocks. The Ala is going to click Protect, as the Bronzong goes for Toxic. And we're going to have just a relatively fat amount of turns here. The Tangrowth's going to come in on the Toxic. He's going to click, I believe, Knockoff here, he's going to click Giga Drain as the Golbat comes in, doing a solid 4%, and then he proceeds to switch straight into his Alamomola. The Golbat Brave Bird's doing a good 19% to the Alamomola, and then he clicks Giga Drain, which he packed just for the Alamomola, but it actually doesn't do any damage. The Alamomola clicks Wish, the Golbat clicks Brave Bird, chipping down the Alamomola even more, as Thunder fishes for Skull Burns, and he gets one. The Bronzong is going to come in as a Scald goes off, and the Alamomola is going to be switched hard into the Tangrowth, which reveals to not be Regenerator, which was actually a miss input by Thunder, which is unfortunate. He clicks Earthquake, assuming possibly Heat-Proof, as the Bronzong knocks the Tangrowth down into range of Rocks plus Poison. Aloe comes in, Golbat comes in, and we have another exchange between the two. Drain going off, doing a nice 20. Alamomola scalding. The Bronzong then comes back in on the Protect from the Alamomola as it heals back up to full. The Alamomola clicks Scald on the Bronzong, fishing for a burn as it finally gets Toxicked by the Bronzong. And the Bronzong then switches into the Melodic as Protect is clicked for Leftovers recovery. The Melodic gets burned by the Flame Orb, and the Tangrowth comes in as a sack as it clicks Protect, and the Tangrowth dies to Rocks plus Poison. Logan Paul gets called out. Galvantula comes in, scaring out the Alamomola into the Sylveon, which eats the Thunder up, but takes a paralysis. Thunder has to switch out as the Sylveon threatens the Galvantula, which is his biggest offensive threat at this point. Hyper Voice is going to result in a 2-hit KO on the Almamola. Leftovers isn't going to save it from anything. The Sylveon knocks out the Almamola, and the Weavile comes in. The Sylveon is switched out into the Melodic as the Weavile clicks Icicle Crash. The Weavile is then switched in straight to the Galvantula as the Scald is clicked, which is going to knock the Galvantula down in range of rocks. He then proceeds to switch in his Sylveon, which is then two-shot by the Galvantula, but he then brings in his Golbat on a sack as Thunder is clicked, which knocks the Golbat into 2-hit KO range. The Infernape comes back in, clicks Vacuum Wave, knocking out the Galvantula, and then Weavile is going to come out. Click the Ice Shard as the Melodic comes back in, relatively safely. He then proceeds to crash, fishing for flinches, but at this point, it's kind of has the game on lock. Scald is going to go off, doing a solid 40 to the Weavile. He then proceeds to go for the Black Hole Eclipse, which is enough to knock out the Melodic with a crit. The Bronzong is going to come back in, as he clicks Knock Off. The Cobra Berry is finally revealed, and the Weavile drops to a Flash Cannon. The Mega Hera then is starting to look pretty good, if it can live a Flamethrower from the Infernape. The Pin Missile is going to go off, knocking out the Bronzong. The Infernape is going to come in, and the Flamethrower is going to go off, but the Heracross is going to drop, resulting in a 2-0 win for its. The Flamethrower was a roll to knock out the Heracross. If the Heracross didn't die, then Thunder would have won that game 1-0. And yeah, just another really good game. Extremely fat team, sorry. Just fishing for the right word. Relatively stally at points, but in the end, decently well played. And it came down to a roll in the end, which is just fantastic. So the next game is going to be myself, coach of the Hidden Valley Ralts, against the coach of the Sail Excadrilles, being Sniper. No, not Sniper. Wow. So the next game is going to be me, coach of the Hidden Valley Ralts, versus coach of the Sail Excadrilles, being... Wow, okay. So this next game is going to be me, the coach of the Hidden Valley Ralts, versus Gamer RB, coach of the Sail Excadrilles. I bring a Xurkitree, Hawlucha, Zoroark, Seismitoad, Scolipede, and Mega Gardevoir, as Gamer brings his Zapdos, Suicune, Heracross, Ferrothorn, Nidoking, and Victini. Looking at team preview, Scolipede can do really well this game. Ferrothorn is a huge defensive problem for my team, and the Victini can be an offensive threat, but the biggest threat by far offensively to me is the Nidoking. And yeah, we will get right into the game. He leads Ferrothorn as I lead Seismitoad. Immediately, I bring in my Scolipede as he sets up his rocks. As Gamer sets up his rocks. Gamer then proceeds to switch into Nidoking as I get up a Swords Dance. Then I'm going to Z Mega Horn the Nidoking and knock it out. Turn 3. Speed Boost is going to go off. The Victini is going to come in, and then he proceeds to double into his Zapdos as Mega Horn is going to connect and net me a 2-shot on the Zapdos in conjunction with the Poison Jab. Ferrothorn is going to come back in here as I click Mega Horn on that, doing a huge chunk of damage. Take the Iron Barbs as he clicks Leech Seed. The Mega Horn is going to go off again, knocking this Ferrothorn out. The Suicune is going to come in, proceed to hit the field next, as the Scolipede continues its reign of terror, setting up a Swords Dance as the Suicune clicks Scald. The Scolipede is going to nail the Suicune as the Scald knocks out the Scolipede, ending the reign of terror. However, the damage is done. The Xurkitree is going to come in, click Thunderbolt once. The Victini is going to hit the field next, and the Xurkitree is going to fail to knock out the Victini as it takes a crit blue flare and dies. The Hawlucha is going to come in now and then proceed to click Acrobatics twice and clean the game up as the Heracross and the Victini both proceed to drop. A really quick game. I felt like that Gamer could have made some different plays. He could have played around the Scolipede better, especially with the Zapdos. The Zapdos could have come in immediately, lived a poison jab, possibly knocked me out with a Heat Wave if he was packing it. If not, then put me in range of Suicune. The Ferrothorn could have had Gyro Ball, which it didn't reveal at all during the game. And yeah, just a fairly straightforward, dominating win by me. And then the last game is an interesting one. It is between Joel, coach of the Philadelphia Phanpies, and Tim, coach of the New Jersey Dwebbles. Tim brings his Emboar, Dugtrio, Gothitelle, Mega Scizor, Slurpuff, and Rotom Cut, as Joel brings his Sharpedo, Weezing, Mega Lopunny, Sarina, Manaphy, and Exploud. At Team Preview, Exploud looks like it can punch a huge hole through this team. If it's a Specs variant, it can take a hit from most things, aside from the Emboar, and knock pretty much everything out with a coverage move. Boom Burst is really good in this matchup, as Exploud is normally able to punch through teams with just Boom Burst. Scizor looks like a huge defensive problem. It stops quite a lot of Joel's offense. The Slurpuff looks keen to take the game late game. As soon as the Weezing goes down, there are really no good immediate responses to it, aside from a potential physically defensive Manaphy. Gothitelle and Dugtrio both looking pretty keen to trap something, but odds are the Weezing is going to be Shed Shell. The Emboar looks like a huge offensive threat as well. Potential Scarf Emboar can click Flare Blitz or Wild Charge against most Mons on this team and to a KO them, as Emboar usually does. So, this game is going to begin with a Weezing lead versus a Gothitelle lead. The Weezing immediately reveals to be Shed Shell as he hard switches in his Sarina, which takes 24 from the Gothitelle Psychic. The Gothitelle switches out into the Emboar as Joel takes initiative, clicks U-turn, and goes into his Lop. The Gothitelle comes in on the Lop as the High Jump Kick goes off, doing a 23. The Lop is then proceeded to get trapped by the Gothitelle, except it doesn't because he clicks Baton Pass. Psychic goes off on the Sarina, doing 27. The Goth then proceeds to T-Bolt, I assume on a predicted Sharpedo coming in, but Joel just clicks U-turn and brings in the Exploud. Exploud now has a free opportunity to just get a kill, as Boom Burst goes off in 2 shots and is a 2 KO on the Rotom because he is a Life Orb Exploud. Volt Switch is going to go off as the Rotom reveals to be quicker, and the Scizor comes in on the Boom Burst, taking nearly half. Exploud is switched out for Weezing, as Tim clicks Bullet Punch on the Weezing coming in, and then proceeds to U-turn out into his Emboar. Joel clicks Flamethrower, doing 12 to the Emboar. The Emboar now gets to get a kill, as the Flare Blitz knocks out the Weezing from where it's at. Sharpedo's going to come out, Scizor's going to come in, but it's too low at this point to check a Flamethrower Exploud. He's going to roost up, and then proceed to let his Scizor go down, meaning that the Sharpedo's best answer is gone. The Dugtrio is going to come in, trap the Exploud. It's going to go down. Then the Lopunny is going to come in, goes into his Rotom to sack it off to the return. Brings in his Gothitelle now, as Joel clicks Baton Pass to bring in his Manaphy this time. Tim makes a decent read and makes a nice read, goes for Thunderbolt, doing 36 to the Manaphy. The Manaphy then proceeds to Tail Glow as Tim goes for a Thunderbolt and actually gets the Paralysis, meaning that the Manaphy is cut short before it can do any real damage. The Sharpedo then proceeds to come in and hit the field, as the Crunch is enough to 2-shot the Gothitelle, and the Sharpedo does take a Thunderbolt from the Gothitelle. The Sharpedo then proceeds to knock out the Goth with a Crunch, as it looks like at this point that's something that the Sharpedo is looking to clean up. The Slurpuff hits the field, and he reveals the Z Poison Jab, which is a nice tech for the Slurpuff. The Dugtrio comes in, reveals to not be sashed, reveals to not have Sucker Punch, and dies to a Waterfall. And the Emboar then reveals to not have Sucker Punch on it as well, as the Sharpedo cleans up the game, getting the last 4 kills. I feel like Tim could have prepped a little bit better for the Sharpedo. He could have put Sucker Punch on his Emboar, or his Dugtrio. Potentially had Sash on his Dugtrio. Sash Reversal looked really nice against the Fampi's team late game, but I can only assume that it was Scarfed. But I would figure Sucker Punch would also be on there to clean out a weakened Sharpedo, but that is his choice. That's going to be the recap for Week 1. Let us, the standings after Week 1. In first place is myself with a 1-0 record plus 4. In tied for... Oh, am I missing a game? I'm missing a game. One moment. Okay, that was my mistake. I missed the last game of the week. Lagoon and the Flint Muddy Water go up against OP Jellicent, coach of the Enister City Agrons. OP Jellicent brings his Mega Aggron, his Latios, his Raikou, his Entei, his Granbull, and his Tentacruel. Excuse me, as Lagoon proceeds to bring his Zardax, Ninetales, Alola, Rotom Wash, Muckalola, Celesteela, and the Conkeldurr. Looking at team preview, Zardax has a tremendous matchup against OP's team. If he can't play around it, the Zard could just straight 6-0 him. The Conk looks pretty decent in terms of a defensive check to stuff like the Raikou if he's an Assault Vest variant. The Muck can obviously pursue Trap Latios. That's rock, paper, scissors, essentially. Ninetales looks really strong here in terms of the Aurora Veil. Meaning he could potentially go into an offensive Celesteela or a DD Zard and then proceed to break the team in half. Rotom looks like a really good pivot, pretty annoying as there is no ground type to switch in. On the flip side, for OP, a Calm Mind Raikou looks extremely potent against Lagoon's team as soon as the Zard takes some damage. The Latios looks really strong if it's a Scarf variant, he just has to avoid a Pursuit Trap from the Muck, or a potential Specs variant, as he can just kind of click Psychic, and the only real, well, he can't really just click Psychic, but he can click moves and do a lot of damage to Lagoon's team outside of the Muck and the Celesteela. Aggron looks really good here. Obviously, it's a really good stop to an offensive Ninetales, and then the Tentacruel in general just looks really strong. Granbull, solid bring here, looking at Lagoon's team. Getting into the game, Granbull leads off against Conkeldurr. Conkeldurr then proceeds to switch into the Alolan Muck. Play Rough goes off, doing a nice 36 to the Alolan Muck as the Aggron comes in. Lagoon clicks Knockoff, pretty telegraphed, as the Rotom comes in on the Aggron, going for the Rocks. The Aggron then switches out into the Latios. Lagoon Hydro Pumps as the Latios takes a crit, 29%. Lagoon stays in. The Rotom Wash takes the Thunderbolt. Volt switches out into the Alolan Muck. OP reveals a really nice tech for the Alolan Muck in the form of Z Earthquake, knocking it out straight up. The Alola Tails comes in as the Latios is scared, or as the Latios Psychics. Lagoon gets up the Veil. OP then proceeds to smartly play around with the Aurora Veil turns, bringing in his Granbull on a Blizzard. Then proceeding to switch into his Aggron on another Blizzard. Lagoon playing pretty passively around this. Blizzard's the Mega Aggron again, sacking his Ninetales. But the Ninetales is then roared out into the Rotom Wash, which proceeds to click Hydro Pump, knocking out the Mega Aggron. The Raikou comes in next, sets up a sub, goes for a Calm Mind, as Lagoon Hydro Pumps again, doing 25%. Lagoon, realizing that he's being pressure stalled, hard switches in his Ninetales to sack it to the Rocks, as OP sets up a sub. Lagoon then proceeds to bring in his Conkeldurr, takes a Thunderbolt through the Veil, doing 24, Drain Punches the sub and gets rid of it. He then proceeds to Drain Punch as the Thunderbolt goes off, doing a lot of damage to the Conkeldurr, knocking out the Raikou with a Drain Punch into a Mach Punch. However, the Conkeldurr is then put in range of a Latios Psychic. Lagoon then proceeds to bring in his Celesteela, which is looking prime to sweep late game, as he reveals to be a Weakness Policy, a Totemize variant. However, OP makes a really nice play going into his Grand Bull, revealing the Rocky helmet, as Lagoon knocks it out with an acrobatics, taking the damage, putting it in range of an extreme speed from the Entei. The Entei comes out, clicks extreme speed, and knocks out the Celesteela, which it would not have been able to do without the Rocky helmet chip. Lagoon proceeds to bring in his Rotom Wash. OP Jellicent then misses a Stone Edge as the Hydro Pump does 67. Lagoon burns his last Hydro Pump as OP goes for an extreme speed. And at this point, the Latios now looks primed to clean up as it just clicks Psychic twice, knocking out the Rotom and the Charizard after rocks. A nice 2-0 win, smart playing. He played very smartly around the Aurora Veil, and the Z Earthquake Latios was a really strong muck check. Overall, a really well-played game. I felt like Lagoon could have made a few different plays around the Aurora Veil. However, the fact that he brought Hyper Offense with just 2 Assault Vest users as his bulk and a Pivotty Rotom Wash, he couldn't really switch around too well. If he brought in his offensive threats, he risked them going down to over predictions. A very well-played game from both players. That is going to conclude Week 1. Going over the standings currently, I am in first place with a 1-0 record plus 4 in terms of my differential. And then Joel then precedes me with a 1-0 record being plus 3. Then there is a 3-way tie in terms of record and differential. OP Jellicent, Jake, and It's Whatever being tied for that position, being 1-0 plus 2 in terms of the differential. ABP rounding off the winning teams, being 1-0 with a plus 1 differential. After him is his opponent, Nathaniel, being 0-1 minus 1. And then Saul, Thunder, and Lagoon are right behind him with a -2 differential. Tim is second to last in terms of placing overall, not in terms of the conferences, being -3, and then the bottom of the pack is Gamer, being -4. So that will conclude the recap for this week. And yeah, I'll see you all next time. My name is Smeargle. Thank you for joining me. This was relatively fun to do. Goodbye.